All right, so this isn't going to be my typical video. Not at all. I was looking at YouTube earlier today, and I happened to see a video by Ruslan entitled "Addressing Every Controversial Moment from the House of David" series. All right, so the House of David is a series that describes the rise of David. All right, King David in Israel. Now, I was excited to see it, but kind of, but I wasn't, because you know how it is, man. Whenever there's a Christian movie or content, especially when you don't know who's doing it, you always wonder, like, is this showing going to be good or not? Hollywood isn't really pressed to represent, Jesus and all of that, right? So I watched the first 2 episodes, and I thought it was pretty good. I liked it so far, but there was some stuff that obviously wasn't there. And, I never actually watched The Chosen. I couldn't get into it. There were things that I thought were cool when I tried to watch it initially, but I did a video a while ago about The Chosen. But I just felt like that they just, like, I look, as a creative, right? I'm a creative. I'm a pastor, I'm a Christian, but I'm a creative. I just think if you serve and worship the creator, right, then you can be creative and you try to be excellent. So I'm a creative. I make music. I do all kinds of things, right? Photography, all of it. So I get, to some degree, artistic. I'm also an author. I've written and dropping some more books, hopefully this year, next year. So I get artistic license. But I just felt like with The Chosen, for me personally, I just felt like there were too many times where artistic license was used in a place I didn't think it needed to be, right? I didn't think it needed to be. That was just me personally. So I never got into The Chosen. I've never watched more than a couple episodes. And I comment like that way with Christian content. So then Ruslan, I saw that, I think he did this a couple days ago. I saw addressing every moment in the thing. And it made me want to ask this one question. This isn't my typical video. I'm not going to walk you through all these scriptures like I normally do. I just have a question. But first, let's watch the little thing I'm talking about. I'm going to show you this little brief trailer at the beginning of Ruslan's video where he's explaining that he went to talk and meet with the people so it's every controversial moment. We're just going to watch about 10, 15 seconds of this video, and then I want to ask my question.
I remember the first conversation, I was like,
to David being depicted as a bastard child, to the overt violence in the show. Something that has a lot of people, I guess, concerned, or they're talking, is opening scene, David is running towards Goliath. Goliath, I think, throws a spear at him, and it actually makes contact. It hits him, and then David falls down. I traveled from San Diego, California to Dallas, Texas to sit down with my friend, Dallas Jenkins, and John Irwin.
It's true that David getting hit by a spear is not in the Bible, but is it contrary to biblical truth?
People are wondering, like, are you guys doing this to get people to start talking, to get people, chattering on the internet? Like,
the bear.
Yeah, like, are you guys poking intentionally in Christian?
All right, so at the beginning of the video, Ruslan is talking, he's just setting up, it's sort of the trailer for the conversation. I watched the video, and they do get to that point. And so I wanted to I want to ask this one question. And again, if you're a follower of the channel, thank you, like and subscribe. This isn't my typical video. This is more of a rant and a question that I have. And this is about Chosen, the House of David, and any Christian content done by Christians, all right? Hollywood is going to do whatever they do, right? Hollywood be used, let me tell you why when we watch a movie like Noah with Christian Bale and all that stuff, you know why that, or Russell Crowe, you know why all that stuff is like, wow, is because oftentimes when Hollywood does a movie, non-Christian Hollywood, they don't draw from the Bible. They'll use a lot of apocryphal or pseudepigrapha literature. So they'll use stuff that we wouldn't put in the Protestant Bible. Catholics may have the apocrypha. The pseudepigrapha are writings that nobody knows who wrote them. So they're like the Book of Enoch. There may be some useful things in it, and Scripture actually quotes on a couple of cases in Jude and 2 Peter, the Book of Enoch. So it's clear that the early Israelites, the early Jews, had some sense of understanding, appreciation, and even agreement with literature that we don't have. Like if you go on like Samuel, there's all these books, the book of Jafar, the book of this, the book of that. Those aren't things that we have, right? So I get that there were things that they believed that we wouldn't say is in our Bible. And we have to be careful because what we call the canon is just what we decided, not we like you and I decided, we weren't there, but like it was decided at the Nicene Creed. So I get all of that, right? But when I watched the scene that we saw at the beginning, so the beginning of the show, it shows David approaching Goliath. They have a brief dialogue, and then David's running at Goliath. Goliath throws a spear, and it hits David, and David is lying there. And you hear a little boy's voice saying something to the effect of, if can a stone change the course of history? Something like that. I can't remember exactly what the voice says, but it's something like, and I get it, it's building tension for the moment. But as soon as I saw that, I was like, I don't know if that's not even, I don't know. I was like, that's not what happened. So I'm like, oh man, is this going to be one of those? So here's a question that I have. And if you're watching live, you can answer in the chat, or if you're watching later. But here's a question to Christians who make Christian movies, like the guys who make The Chosen and House of David, all right? Here's the question that I have, and this is a genuine question. I watched the whole interview, so I didn't see this really addressed. But here's a genuine question. Why can't scenes that are in the scripture stay accurate? Like, why do we have to have artistic license when scenes are actually in the Bible? Like there's enough tension, there's enough drama, there's enough stuff in the Bible. Now, I will say this. From the first two videos that I saw, first two episodes, there was some good dialogue that was straight out of the Bible. I mean, it was incredible. I loved it because I'm a Bible guy. But let me tell you why I'm asking this question, right? Here's the reality, and I don't think Christians, so later on, let me say this real quick. Later on in the episode, when Ruslan kind of broached the topic, and the writer of the director of The Chosen said, is it unscriptural though? Like basically his point is this. Okay, yeah, we know that's not what the Bible actually says, but the Bible doesn't say that he didn't get hit. So basically, it doesn't say he didn't get hit by a spear. So it's almost like it's in the realm of possibility that it could have happened. So is it unscriptural though? Like just because it could have happened, scripture didn't say that it didn't happen, but it didn't say that it did. Is it unscriptural? That's kind of the logic. Hopefully I'm not misrepresenting them, but if I am, then just go with it because it's just a video. I'm just trying. All right, so let me answer that question because Ruslan kind of, well, maybe they edited it out. He didn't answer it that I thought. Is it unscriptural? Yes, I think it is unscriptural. Let me tell you why I think it's unscriptural. There's a difference between artistic license to fill out a narrative. Let's be clear, right? Even though the Bible gives us narratives, the Bible does not tell us, like it's not a narrative like reading a novel. It's not J.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis or that's not what the Bible is. The Bible gives us narrative that God wanted us to have so that we understand enough of the story to make sense. There's a lot of the Bible, the narrative piece, especially Old Testament Israel, and even in the Gospels. I mean, in the Gospel, in Luke 3, we see Jesus at 12, and then in Luke 4, we see Jesus as a grown man. We have no idea what happened from 12 to, let's say, 30, right? However old he was. So if you're going to make a video on the Gospels, and you're going to try to fill in the gaps of what happened from 12 to 30, especially if it may answer questions about scenes that we see in the Bible later. Like, let's just prime example, right? Let's say you're doing a movie on the life of Jesus, on the gospel according to Luke, on the life of Jesus, right? And let's say, Jesus goes from 12, you show him as a kid in the temple, talking to Joseph and Mary, saying, didn't you know I would be in my father's house? And then you show him as a grown man. Let's say you come up with a narrative of why Joseph is dead. Okay, we can roll with that because we know, as far as we know, Joseph was not in any part of the God Jesus's once his ministry started. And when it said your mother, sister, and brothers are looking for you, it didn't say your dad, Joseph, right? So it's safe to say Joseph had passed away before Jesus started his 3-year ministry or whatever we think it was, from the time he got baptized by John until the ascension, right? I think that's a safe bet. Create a storyline of how he died, as long as it fills in the gaps that make sense. I totally get that. When it's artistic representation, I totally get it. But my question is this: why, when the story is actually there, do we have to add more scenes to it that weren't there? Like I took issue with a scene in The Chosen where when Jesus had Peter come to him and walk on water, and they were flashing back to Peter's wife basically having a miscarriage, apparently. And Peter was arguing with Jesus during the scene of him walking on water. And it was about why is he preaching to the Gentiles and stuff like that. And then people who got to me who watched the show, even Ruslan hit me and gave me some background about why they did that. Because I hadn't seen the show, so I didn't understand, well, who was they flashing back to this lady? And apparently that was Peter's wife and that stuff that's not in the scripture. And they were trying to explain to me that it was just adding tension and these things. And I said, this is why I can't watch the show. Me personally, I'm not telling you not to watch it. This is why I said I just can't watch the shows, because like you don't have to do that. When Jesus said in that scene, "Come to me, all who are heavy laden," that was an important scene in Matthew 11. That was an important statement. Jesus didn't say that in Matthew 14 when he told Peter to walk on water. So I was like, why would they combine those two stories? And then, Ruslan gave me his perspective because he saw my episode. He texted me and other people did. And I just said, well, I just am who I am, right? So when he said, is it unscriptural? I think it is. I think it is. Because if you say, hey, let me tell you why I think it's unscriptural and why I think it's dangerous, all right? So I get what he's saying. This is the director of The Chosen. It was him, Brian, I forgot his name, and the other guy. They're side by side in Ruslan's interview. Here's why I think it's unscriptural. Let me tell you why. Because if you say, well, hey, scripture doesn't say he did it, but scripture doesn't say he didn't do it either. And so we're adding some stuff that could have happened, even though that's not what scripture's emphasis was. I get that. But you know who else does that? People who try to twist scripture to say things that it doesn't say. So I have heard a ton of people say, well, Jesus never said anything about homosexuality, or Jesus never said anything about this. And people fire back, well, Jesus never said anything about bestiality either, but people do. That's a whole, it's not just artistic expression. There are significant pockets of people who are creating false churches, false doctrines, because it wasn't explicitly stated by Jesus or so forth, right? So when you do that as an artistic framework, I think when it's clear, when the scene is clear or the situation is clear, I think it actually does a disservice. I think it is unscriptural. Now, again, it doesn't have to be his conviction. You don't even have to agree with me, but that's my point. So when I say, why can't the scenes that are in the scripture stay accurate? I think 1 Samuel, was that 17, I think is one of the most riveting chapters in the Bible. I mean, and apparently, I haven't seen it yet, but apparently the conversation between Goliath and David, the dude said, we followed it verbatim, word for word. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, right? But to me, when you add like he throws a spear, now, unless there's going to be a twist, unless they're going to be like, that actually didn't happen, but maybe David was daydreaming and thought that happened. And maybe they're going to do that. Maybe they're going to show that didn't happen, but David was daydreaming that might happen, and he got back up, and that's part of but the way that the guy said it was something like this. Well, in my mind, this idea of rising up is what it's about to me. And so that scene of David rising up and defeating will eventually play out later on in the thing. I totally get that. But here's the problem that I feel like these guys don't always, at least in my mind, I don't know. Ruslan might text me if he watches this video and be like, yeah, bro, you were wrong on this class. I'm saying what I'm aware of, all right? I don't have a relationship with them like he does. I can't fly to Dallas, Texas and interview these people. My YouTube channel's not that big. And I could text Ruslan, but I don't want to text him and ask him a question about this, right? Here's my perspective. As believers, we don't get enough representation that's accurate, that's semi-accurate, right? You got, recently I just did a video on the girl who played Wicked, the black bisexual girl is going to play Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. And people are flipping out. Now, I personally don't have a problem with it because Jesus Christ Superstar is not an accurate representation of the gospel. So go ahead and get someone that's not an accurate representation of Jesus and keep on walking. I ain't talking to you anymore. Just go do that, because I don't want anyone to think that that's what it was like. So if you have someone that doesn't look like Jesus, no one's going to take that accurate portrayal seriously, because it's not accurate. So I'm fine with that. But I think like we already get shafted as believers. We see a movie, oh, we get our hopes up, a show. And then it's like, and then there's so many things that are not consistent. We have to either compromise or just be disappointed, right? And I think the Bible is riveting. Again, you need to fill in the blanks if you're telling a story, because things didn't happen. It doesn't record every conversation that happened. But when we see that first Samuel, look at this real quick. Let's go back to here real quick, because I'm going to show you something. This scene in 1 Samuel 17, to me, this is just a riveting scene, right? When the Philistine arose and came, and this is after the conversation. David ran quickly toward the Babylon to meet the Philistine, and David put his hand on the back. So you can imagine David running towards him, and as he's running, he reaches his hand in the bag, and he puts it in the slingshot, and then he pulls it, and maybe he stops for a second. Like, you can see that. There is no spears that we see, no javelins that we've seen being thrown. Now, again, if it's going to, I've only seen the first 2 episodes. I think there's 4. So maybe they've already did this, and maybe this is a moot point. So I'm going off, I haven't seen episodes 3 and 4 of House of David. I like what I see so far, but I think, I feel like this scene, it doesn't need a javelin thrown at David. It doesn't need it. So I feel like, my question is, why can't the scenes that are in Scripture stay accurate? So one reason why, I told you why I think it's unscriptural, and I stand by that. But here's another reason why I think it's at the very least, it's misleading in a negative way. I don't think it's just artistic. For us as believers, because we don't get any representation, a lot of what people see when they watch The Chosen or watch House of David, if they are interested in Christianity, they're going to believe what they see happening. So if you're aware of a Christianity, but you're not really a believer, you don't read the Bible, and you say, you know what, let me watch this show. I mean, I remember going to church a little bit. I heard about some of these stories, and everyone knows about David and Goliath. So you're watching it, and you're like, oh, he threw a spear at him. And again, they may resolve this issue. So understand, if you've watched it and you're in the comment section like, oh, bro, you're wrong, they address. I haven't seen the last 2 episodes. So, but I'm thinking, as if I'm talking to someone who's not a believer and they watch the show and they watch this stuff, and then they try to open their Bible and they see these discrepancies, it's like, well, what's actually happening here? I just think that as believers, we are hungry for a presentation of truth. I think this is why the Passion of the Christ, at least the crucifixion scene, the beating and that resonated with so many of us, because it was the first time that we have really seen a depiction like that. The brutality of the beating, the bloodiness of all of that stuff was like, like if you're a believer, you're just weeping as you see it, right? Some of the dialogue before that, we don't really know. I mean, yeah. But it wasn't really about dialogue, because it was in Aramaic, I think. So it wasn't even in English, if I remember correctly. So there is a sense where we would just love to see God represented in a way that we can read in the Bible. Like, I want to, again, don't get me wrong. If there's artistic expression, let it fill in questions that we actually have. Like, what happened to Jesus' dad? What happened to Joseph? Let it do that. When we see a scene clearly, like David and like Peter walking on water, why are you adding in a whole dialogue or a whole conflict or a whole other scene? Sure, that's his artistic expression. Maybe it is, but I just feel like, I don't know. I just don't understand, why can't we say, let's let this scene stay accurate. Let's let this scene play out the way we read it in Scripture, because most of us have either heard sermons or we've taught these things, we've heard it, and you imagine what it would be like. Like, I wish sometimes they would just not think about the reality of their artistic expression, versus think about the people, and maybe they do this. Think about the people who are believers who are going to connect the dots and they're going to be, hey, that's not really there. Why do we always have to settle for, well, is it unscriptural? I mean, that's like, it's almost like, again, I'm not saying this guy, they mean this at all, but it's almost like believing that you can tell a little white lie. Like, to God, there's no such thing as a little white lie. You don't say, well, I didn't really want to say it because I didn't want to hurt your feelings. But like, okay, but that's still lying in fear of man, right? So I just feel like, is it unscriptural? I believe so. I believe if you, just because scripture doesn't say that it didn't happen, doesn't mean we should say that it did happen unless we're going to qualify that, right? So that's just, again, this isn't my typical video. But as I was watching that video with Ruslan, sometimes I wish, sometimes I wish my platform was bigger, not because I could monetize it better, so that I could have opportunities to ask people questions, so I could actually interact with people and be like, why do you believe that? Why did you say that? Like, why did you do that? Like, and sometimes I wish, but who am I? I'm nobody, but I wish sometimes, that's the only reason why I want my platform to grow. It's not because I'm trying to monetize more. And I do thank people who give. I appreciate that greatly. It really does. I'm a dad with 3 boys. I appreciate it. But that's not why I wish I could grow. I wish I could grow because I wish I had been in the George Janko Christian Avengers. And maybe the rule was, A, don't disagree with anybody. But there were a couple things I would have been like, can you explain why you think that? Because I think some of their videos privately, I did appreciate this. I was watching Ruslan get interviewed by these other philosophers, and they brought up something that Johnny Chang said about God showed him the power of the tongue by letting Moses name the animals. And Ruslan said, yeah, I was a little thrown off by that a bit. So was I. And I think people like that, they get these YouTube channels, they're newer believers, and they just be saying stuff. And I think like, oof. But I don't want to make videos always saying, bro, this is wrong. Because then it sounds like you're going after other people. But so I don't know. If my channel grows and I get a chance to talk to some of these people, I would love to just pick their brains on why they do what they do. But I think for this purposes, I just think, I'm not saying you shouldn't watch The Chosen or watch these things. Watch them. If you like them, cool. I'll continue to watch House of David. I like a lot of it so far. And I'll see what they do with the spear, Goliath hitting with the spear. But I imagine a lot of these guys are bringing their personal convictions. And you have to remember that as a community of Christians, we long to see like, hey, we get there's going to be artistic expression. But does it have to happen in scenes that are just clear? Those scenes are powerful enough. You're adding visuals, music, effects to things that we only imagine by reading them. You don't have to add other artistic elements that are not in the scene just because you can. But what do I know? This is just me thinking out loud. All right, I appreciate y'all, man. Like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for the super chats for those who give them. Appreciate you. We'll see you in the next channel, next video. Grace and peace.